The hospital halls were always the same. White walls, bright lights, the smell of cleaning products mixed with medicine. And in those halls, every single day for the past 32 years, walked a woman that most people never really saw. She was 61 years old. Her hair had turned gray a long time ago and she kept it tied back in a simple bun. She wore the same blue uniform every day. She pushed a mop across the floors. She emptied trash cans. She cleaned bathrooms. She wiped down tables in the cafeteria. She did her job quietly, without complaint, without asking for anything. Worked at Cleveland General Hospital in Ohio. It was a big hospital with hundreds of doctors and nurses and other workers. People rushed through the halls all day and all night. They were busy saving lives. They were busy with important things, and was just the cleaning lady, the janitor, the woman with the mop. Nobody really knew her. Nobody really tried to know her. She had worked there for more than 3 decades, but if you asked most people in that hospital about, they would just shrug. They might remember seeing her somewhere. They might remember her face, but they would not be able to tell you anything about her life. That was fine with. She did not want attention. She did not want people to ask questions. She just wanted to do her work, go home, and live her quiet life. That was enough. That had to be enough. Every morning woke up at 4:30. Her apartment was small and simple. Just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room with an old couch and a television that she rarely watched. The walls were mostly empty. There were no photographs on display, no decorations, nothing that told the story of who she was or where she came from. She would make herself a cup of tea and eat a piece of toast. Then she would put on her uniform and take the bus to work. The bus ride took 45 minutes. She always sat in the same seat near the back. She always looked out the window at the same buildings and the same streets. She never talked to anyone. At the hospital, she would start her shift at 6 in the morning. The night workers were finishing up. The day workers were just arriving, would get her cart with all her supplies and begin her rounds. She knew every corner of that hospital. She knew which floors got dirty the fastest. She knew which bathrooms needed extra attention. She knew when the cafeteria needed to be cleaned and when the waiting rooms filled up with families. The doctors and nurses walked past her every day. Some of them had worked at the hospital for years just like her, but they rarely said hello. They rarely looked at her face. To them, she was just part of the background, like the walls, like the floor, like the chairs in the waiting room. She was there, but she was not really there. Sometimes a patient would smile at her. Sometimes a tired mother waiting for news about her sick child would say thank you when cleaned up around her. Those small moments meant something too. They reminded her that she was still a person, that she still existed in this world. But most of the time she was invisible, and after so many years she had gotten used to it. There was only one thing that allowed herself, one small thing that she could not stop, no matter how hard she tried. When she worked alone in the empty hallways late at night or early in the morning, she would hum. Soft melodies would escape from her lips, classical music, beautiful, complicated pieces that seemed strange coming from a cleaning lady. She did not even realize she was doing it most of the time. The music just came out of her. It lived inside her, and sometimes it needed to breathe. One morning, a young nurse named was walking down a hallway when she heard the humming. She stopped and listened. The melody was so beautiful, so full of feeling. She looked around and saw mopping the floor, her eyes distant, her lips moving softly. Stood there for a moment, surprised. She had seen many times before but had never really noticed her. Now, hearing this music, she felt like she was seeing her for the first time. But then's phone buzzed. She had patients to check on. She hurried away and forgot about the moment. That was how it always went. People might notice for a second, but then they moved on with their busy lives. Lived alone. She had no husband. She had no children. She had no family in America. Her parents had died many years ago back in China. She had no brothers or sisters. There was no one to call her on the phone, No one to visit her apartment. No one to ask how her day was. She ate lunch alone in a corner of the cafeteria every day. She brought her own food from home, usually rice and vegetables. Simple things. She sat at the same small table away from everyone else. She ate quickly and quietly. Then she went back to work. Her in the cleaning department knew her a little better than most. There was a man named Robert who had worked with her for 15 years. He was friendly and liked to talk. He would ask about her weekends sometimes. She would give short answers. Fine, quiet, nothing special. Robert could tell that was a private person. He respected that. But sometimes he wondered about her. She seemed so alone, so closed off from the world. He wondered if she had always been this way or if something had happened to make her like this. One day Robert asked her directly, "Do you have any hobbies? What do you do when you are not working?" Looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes were dark and deep. There was something in those eyes, something old, something sad. But she just smiled softly and said, "I rest. I read sometimes. That is all." Robert nodded and did not push further. But he did not believe her. He felt like there was more to this quiet woman than she let anyone see. And he was right. What nobody knew was that had a secret that she had kept for more than 30 years, a secret that lived in a small box in the back of her closet, a secret that she looked at sometimes when she was alone at night, when the city was quiet and the memories became too strong to ignore. Inside that box were old photographs, newspaper clippings, a program from a concert, a letter written in Chinese characters. And in those photographs there was a young woman, beautiful, wearing a silk gown, standing in front of a grand piano on a stage, her hands raised, her eyes closed, her whole body filled with music. That young woman was. But that was a different life, a different world, a world that no longer existed, a world that had been taken away from her. Now she was just a janitor, a cleaning lady, an invisible woman in a hospital in Cleveland, Ohio. And that was all anyone would ever know. Or so she thought. Because sometimes life has a way of bringing the past back to the surface. Sometimes the things we try to bury refuse to stay buried. And sometimes the world finally sees what was there all along. Did not know it yet, but everything was about to change. A simple announcement, a small talent show, a decision made in a moment of weakness. These things would come together and crack open the door to a past she had tried so hard to forget. And once that door was open, nothing would ever be the same again. But for now, finished mopping the floor, she emptied her bucket, she put away her supplies, and she went home to her small, empty apartment, alone with her memories and her silence. Just like every other day. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything started. Was cleaning the main lobby of the hospital when she noticed people gathering around the big bulletin board near the front desk. Nurses and doctors and other workers were all looking at something. Some of them were laughing. Some were shaking their heads. Others looked excited. Did not usually pay attention to such things. Announcements and meetings and events were for other people, not for her. But today, something made her curious. Maybe it was the way people were smiling. Maybe it was because she had nothing else to do at that moment. Whatever the reason, she walked a little closer to see what everyone was looking at. There was a big colorful poster on the board. It said, "Cleveland General Hospital First Annual Staff Talent Show. Show us what you can do. Singers, dancers, comedians, musicians, and more. Sign up now. All staff welcome." A talent show. Had not heard those words in a very long time. She stood there staring at the poster while memories flashed through her mind. Stages, lights, audiences, applause, a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. She shook her head and turned away. This was not for her. She was a janitor. She cleaned floors. She emptied trash. What would she do at a talent show? Stand on stage and mop? The idea was silly. She started to walk away. But then she heard her name. "Hey." She turned around. It was her supervisor, a large man named Dave. He was standing near the bulletin board with a big smile on his face. Dave was a good boss. He was fair and kind to all the workers in the cleaning department. He always said hello to. He always asked how she was doing. He was one of the few people in the hospital who actually seemed to see her. "Did you see this?" Dave asked, pointing at the poster. "A talent show, pretty fun, right?" Nodded slowly. "Yes, it seems nice." Dave laughed. "You should sign up." Felt her face get warm. "Me, no, I do not have any talent." "Oh, come on," Dave said. "I hear you humming all the time. You are always humming some kind of music. It sounds really nice. Do you play an instrument or something?" His heart stopped for a moment. She did not know that anyone heard her humming. She thought she was always alone when she did it. She felt embarrassed and a little scared. I play a little piano," she said quietly. "But not very well, just simple things." Dave's eyes lit up. "Piano, that is great. You should definitely sign up. It does not matter if you are not a professional. This is just for fun. It is to help everyone feel good and have a nice time together." Shook her head again. "I am not sure. I do not think I should." But Dave was not giving up. "Think about it, okay? It would be really nice to see you up there. You have been working here for so long. Let people see another side of you." He smiled warmly and walked away. Stood there alone, her mind spinning with thoughts and feelings she did not know how to handle. For the rest of the day, she could not stop thinking about the talent show. Every time she passed the bulletin board, she looked at the poster. She watched other people sign up. She saw nurses write their names down for singing. She saw a young doctor sign up for comedy. She saw a group of workers from the kitchen sign up for a dance. Everyone seemed so happy and excited. Everyone had something to share. But what did she have? A mop and 30 years of silence. That night she went home and sat on her old couch. She did not turn on the television. She did not read her book. She just sat there in the dark thinking. She thought about the piano. She thought about music. She thought about all the years she had spent hiding from her past, hiding from herself, hiding from everyone. She had not touched a piano in over 20 years. After she came to America, she tried to play once. She found a piano in a church that let her use it. But when she sat down and put her fingers on the keys, she could not do it. The music would not come. Every note reminded her of what she had lost. Every sound brought back pain and sadness. She cried for an hour and never went back. So she stopped. She told herself that part of her life was over. She was not a pianist anymore. She was just a cleaning lady, just nobody. But now, sitting in her dark apartment, she felt something strange. Something she had not felt in a long time. It was small and weak, like a tiny flame trying to stay alive in the wind. But it was there. It was hope. Maybe, she thought, maybe I could try just something simple, something easy, something that would not hurt too much. The next morning did something that surprised even herself. During her lunch break, she walked to the bulletin board. She stood in front of the sign-up sheet. Her hand was shaking as she picked up the pen. She wrote her name. Under talent, she wrote piano. Under song, she hesitated. What could she play? She thought about all the complicated pieces she used to perform. Chopin. No, those were too hard. Those would bring back too many memories. She needed something safe, something that would not break her heart. So she wrote, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. A children's song, a beginner's piece, the simplest thing she could think of. She put down the pen and walked away quickly, before she could change her mind. A few hours later, she heard people talking about the sign-up sheet. 2 young nurses were looking at it and laughing. Look at this, one of them said. The old janitor signed up something. She is going to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on piano. How cute is that? The other nurse giggled. That is sweet. I guess everyone needs a chance to feel special. They walked away, still laughing softly. They did not mean to be cruel. They thought it was nice that the quiet cleaning lady wanted to participate, But they did not expect anything special. Why would they? She was just the invisible woman with the mop. Heard them. She was standing around the corner and she heard every word. Her face burned with shame. She thought about going back and erasing her name. She thought about forgetting the whole thing. What was she thinking? She was too old for this, too invisible, too nothing. But something inside her would not let her quit. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was that tiny flame of hope that refused to die. She had signed up. She would go through with it. She would play her simple little song and then go back to being invisible. That was the plan. She had no idea that plan was about to change everything. In the days that followed, felt nervous all the time. She could not eat properly. She could not sleep well. Every time she thought about standing on that stage, her stomach turned upside down. But there was also something else, something unexpected. When she hummed now, she hummed a little louder. When she walked through the halls, she walked a little taller. And sometimes, late at night, she would hold her hands out in front of her and move her fingers in the air, remembering, practicing, dreaming. The talent show was in 2 weeks. 2 weeks to prepare for a song she learned when she was 5 years old. It should have been easy. It should have been nothing. But for it was everything. Because somewhere deep inside her, beneath all the years of silence and hiding and loneliness, the music was still alive. And it was waiting for the chance to finally be free. The night before the talent show, could not sleep. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city outside her window. Cars passing by, a dog barking somewhere far away, the wind moving through the trees. Her mind would not stop. Thoughts kept coming, one after another, like waves crashing on a beach. What was she doing? Why did she sign up? What would people think when they saw her on that stage? An old cleaning lady playing a children's song. They would laugh. They would feel sorry for her. They would shake their heads and forget about her by the next day. She should not have done this. She should have stayed invisible. Invisible was safe. Invisible did not hurt. Sat up in bed. Sleep was not going to come tonight. She got up and walked to her small kitchen. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the table, holding the warm cup in her hands. The apartment was so quiet, so empty, just like her life. She thought about calling someone, but who? There was no one to call, no family, no close friends, just who barely knew her name. This was the life she had built for herself, a life without connections, a life without risk, a life without pain. But also a life without joy, without music, without the thing that had once made her feel alive. Put down her tea and walked to her bedroom closet. She stood in front of it for a long moment, her hand on the door handle. She knew what was inside. She knew what she was about to do. Part of her wanted to turn away. Part of her wanted to go back to bed and pretend that tomorrow was just another day. But she could not tonight. She opened the closet and reached to the back, behind the old clothes and boxes she never opened. There in the corner was a small wooden box. She had not touched it in years. She carried it carefully to her bed and sat down. Her hands were shaking as she opened the lid. Inside were pieces of her old life, the life she had tried so hard to forget, the life she had left behind in China more than 30 years ago. The first thing she saw was a photograph. It was old and faded, but she could still see every detail clearly. A young woman, maybe 25 years old, stood on a grand stage. She wore a beautiful silk gown, deep red with golden flowers. Her black hair was long and shining. Her hands were raised above the piano keys. Her eyes were closed. Her face was full of peace and joy. That young woman was. But she was not called back then. Her Chinese name was, it meant beautiful jade. Her parents had given her that name because they believed she was precious. They believed she would do great things. And for a while she did. Was born with a gift. From the time she was 3 years old, she could play music. Her parents were poor farmers, but they saved every penny to buy her a small keyboard. She taught herself to play by listening to the radio. By the time she was 8, she was better than most adults. By 12, she was performing at local concerts. By 18, she had won a scholarship to the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, the most famous music school in all of China. At the conservatory, became a star. Her teachers said she was a genius. She could play the most difficult pieces perfectly. But more than that, she played with feeling. When she touched the piano, people cried. People forgot their troubles. People felt things they could not explain. She gave concerts all over China. She was invited to play in other countries. She was on television and in newspapers. Everyone knew her name. Everyone said she would become one of the greatest pianists in the world. And then everything fell apart. Stared at the photograph, tears forming in her eyes. She remembered that night, the night that changed everything. It was 1980. There was political trouble in China. The government was changing. People who were seen as too Western, too different, were being watched. Artists and musicians were in danger. Success had made her famous, but it had also made her a target. One night, officials came to her apartment. They told her that her music was not acceptable. They said she played too much foreign music, Western music. They said she was a bad influence on the people. They told her she could never perform again. They took her piano. They destroyed her recordings. They erased her from the music world. Was broken. Everything she had worked for, everything she loved, was gone in one night. She had nothing left. Her parents begged her to leave the country. They had a relative in America who could help her. It was dangerous to stay, so made the hardest decision of her life. She left China. She left her parents, her home, her language, her name. She arrived in America with nothing. No money, no connections, no English, no piano. She took any job she could find. She worked in restaurants. She worked in factories. And finally, she got a job as a janitor at Cleveland General Hospital. It was steady work. It was safe. It was invisible. And that was what she wanted, to be invisible, to disappear, to forget who she had been. For 32 years, she had kept her secret. She never told anyone about her past. She never played the piano. She tried not to think about music, but music never left her. It stayed inside her, like a river that had been blocked but still flowed underground. Now, sitting on her bed with the box of memories open before her, cried. She cried for the young woman she used to be. She cried for her parents who had died without ever seeing her again. She cried for all the concerts she never gave, all the music she never played, all the years she spent hiding. She picked up another item from the box. It was a program from her last concert in China. The paper was yellow and fragile. On the cover was her photograph, and inside was a list of the pieces she had played. Chopin, the same composer she used to hum while mopping hospital floors. At the bottom of the box was a letter. It was from her mother, written just before she died. Had read it so many times that she knew every word by heart. Her mother had written in Chinese, "My dear, your music is not gone. It is only sleeping. One day it will wake up again. Do not be afraid. Let the music live." Held the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would stand on a stage for the first time in over 40 years. It was just a small hospital talent show. It was just a simple children's song. Nobody expected anything special, but knew the truth. Tomorrow was not about Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Tomorrow was about facing her past. Tomorrow was about finding out if the music was really still alive inside her. She put everything back in the box and closed the lid. Then she lay down on her bed and stared at the ceiling again. Sleep finally came just before dawn, and in her dreams she was again, young and beautiful, standing on a grand stage, her hands on the piano, the music flowing through her like a river finally set free. When she woke up, the sun was rising. It was the day of the talent show. Got out of bed slowly. Her body was tired, but her heart was awake. She did not know what would happen tonight. She did not know if she could really do this, but she knew one thing for certain. She was done hiding. Whatever happened, she would face it. She would stand on that stage, she would put her fingers on those keys, and she would let the music decide what came next. The hospital auditorium was filling up with people. It was Friday evening and the talent show was about to begin. Workers from every department had come to watch. There were doctors in their white coats, nurses in colorful scrubs, people from the kitchen, the office, the maintenance crew. Even some patients who were well enough had come down to see the show. The room buzzed with noise. People were talking and laughing. They were excited. This was the first talent show the hospital had ever held, and everyone wanted to see what there could do. Backstage in a small room behind the curtain, the performers were waiting. There were about 15 acts in total. Some people looked confident. They were stretching, warming up their voices, practicing their moves. Others looked nervous, packing back and forth, checking their phones, drinking water. In the corner of the room, sitting alone on a metal chair, was. She had not changed out of her work uniform. Everyone else had dressed up in nice clothes. The singers wore pretty dresses. The dancers wore special outfits. Even the comedian had put on a nice shirt and tie, but was wearing the same blue uniform she wore every day. The same simple shoes. Her gray hair was still in its plain bun. She had thought about wearing something different. That morning, she had stood in front of her closet for a long time, looking at the few nice clothes she owned. But in the end, she decided not to change. She was a janitor. That was who she was now. She would not pretend to be something else. A young woman from the Human Resources Department was organizing everything backstage. She had a clipboard and a headset, and she was running around making sure everyone was ready. Her name was Jessica, and she was very nice but very stressed. "Okay, everyone," Jessica called out. "We start in 10 minutes. First up is Doctor with his guitar. Then we have the nursing team dance. Then." She went through the whole list, was near the end. Number 12 out of 15. She would have to wait a long time. That was both good and bad. Good because she had more time to prepare. Bad because she had more time to be scared. His hands were cold. Her stomach felt tight. She kept her eyes on the floor, trying not to think too much, but thoughts kept coming anyway. What if she forgot how to play? What if her fingers did not work anymore? What if she sat down at the piano and nothing happened? What if everyone laughed at her? She closed her eyes and tried to breathe slowly, in and out, the way her mother had taught her before her first concert so many years ago. The show began, could hear everything from backstage. The MC, a friendly administrator named Tom, welcomed everyone. The audience clapped. Then the first act started. Doctor played a song on his guitar and sang. He was not perfect, but he was good. The audience cheered. One by one, the acts went on. The nursing team did a funny dance that made everyone laugh. A man from the lab did magic tricks. A woman from billing sang a beautiful song that made some people cry. A group of young workers did a hip-hop dance that got everyone on their feet. Each time an act finished, the audience clapped and cheered. The energy in the room was warm and happy. People were having a good time. They were seeing there in a new way. They were connecting with each other. Backstage, watched the other performers come back after their acts. They were smiling, relieved, proud of themselves. Some of them hugged each other. Some of them laughed about their mistakes. Nobody seemed to care about being perfect. They just cared about having fun and being part of something special. Felt even more alone. She did not belong here. She was not like these people. She was just an old cleaning lady with a silly idea. But it was too late to run away. Her name was on the list. Soon it would be her turn. Jessica appeared next to her. "You are up in 5 minutes. Are you ready?" Looked up at the young woman. Her mouth was dry. She could barely speak. "Yes," she whispered. "I am ready." Jessica smiled kindly. "You will be great. Just have fun out there." She hurried away to help someone else. Stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak. She walked to the edge of the curtain and looked out at the stage. There was an old upright piano sitting in the middle of the stage. It was not a grand piano like the one she used to play in China. It was small and simple, probably used for hospital events and holiday parties. But it was a piano, real keys, real strings, real music waiting to be made. Stared at it. Her heart was beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. Memories flooded through her. All the pianos she had played in her life, the tiny keyboard in her village, the practice rooms at the conservatory, the grand pianos on concert stages around China, and now this simple upright in a hospital auditorium. The act before her finished. The audience clapped. Tom, the MC, came back on stage. Thank you, that was wonderful. And now we have something a little different. Please welcome a longtime member of our hospital family. She has been working here for 32 years, keeping our hospital clean and beautiful. Please give a warm welcome to. The audience clapped politely, could hear them from behind the curtain. The applause was friendly but not excited. They did not expect much. They were just being nice. She heard whispers in the front rows. Who is? I think she is one of the janitors. What is she going to do? Play piano, I think, some children's song. Oh, that is sweet. Took a deep breath. This was it, no turning back now. She stepped out from behind the curtain and walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, much brighter than she had expected. She could not see the faces in the audience clearly, just shapes and shadows, but she could feel them watching her. Hundreds of eyes, all looking at the old cleaning lady in the blue uniform. She walked slowly toward the piano. Her shoes made soft sounds on the wooden stage. The room was quiet now. Everyone was waiting. Tom, the MC, stood near the edge of the stage. He read from his card. We'll be playing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star for us tonight. A few people in the audience smiled. Some of them made quiet sounds, not laughing exactly, but something close. The kind of sound people make when they think something is cute but not very impressive. Reached the piano. She stood next to it for a moment, looking at the keys. They were a little yellow with age. Some of them had small chips on the edges. This piano had been played many times by many hands. She sat down on the bench. It was hard and uncomfortable, nothing like the padded benches she used to have at her concerts, but it did not matter. None of that mattered now. She placed her hands on her lap. She could feel them shaking. She looked down at her fingers. These hands had played the most difficult pieces ever written. These hands had made audiences cry with joy. These hands had been called magical, blessed, genius. And for more than 20 years, these hands had done nothing but push a mop. Closed her eyes, she thought about her mother's letter. Your music is not gone, it is only sleeping. She took one more deep breath. Then she opened her eyes, lifted her hands, and placed her fingers on the keys. The whole room was silent. Everyone was watching. Nobody knew what was about to happen. Not even herself. But in that moment, with her fingers finally touching piano keys again after so many years, something inside her began to wake up. Something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time. And it was ready to come alive. Press the first key. A single note filled the room, clear, simple, pure. Then another note, and another. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. The melody was exactly what everyone expected. A children's song, easy, basic, the kind of thing a 5-year-old learns in their first piano lesson. The audience smiled politely. A few people nodded along to the familiar tune. Some of them looked at their phones, already bored, waiting for the next act. In the back row, 2 nurses whispered to each other. This is sweet, one of them said. Good for her. Yeah, the other replied. I wonder how long this will take. Played the song through once. Simple notes, simple rhythm, just like she had planned, just like she had promised herself. Nothing fancy, nothing dangerous, nothing that would bring back the pain. But then something happened. As she reached the end of the first verse, her fingers hesitated. They hung in the air above the keys, trembling slightly. The audience did not notice. They thought she was just pausing, taking a breath, getting ready to finish. But inside's mind, a war was happening. She could feel the music. It was there just below the surface like water pressing against a dam. For 30 years she had kept it locked away. She had built walls around it. She had told herself it was gone forever. But it was not gone. It had never been gone. It was just waiting, waiting for this moment. Her mother's words echoed in her head. "Do not be afraid. Let the music live." Closed her eyes, and she made a choice. Her fingers came down on the keys again, but this time they did not play the simple tune. This time they played something else, something different, something that made the whole room freeze. The melody of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" was still there, but it was changing. It was growing. It was becoming something magnificent. What was playing now was his 12 variations on Ah. It was one of the most famous and most difficult pieces ever written for piano, and it was based on the same melody as "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." The first variation started soft and delicate. The simple children's tune transformed into something elegant and beautiful. The notes danced across the keyboard like butterflies in a garden. His fingers moved with perfect control, touching each key exactly right. In the audience, people stopped looking at their phones. They stopped whispering. They stopped everything. Something was happening on that stage that they did not understand, something that made them sit up and pay attention. The second variation came, then the third. Each one was more complex than the last. The music grew richer, deeper, more powerful. Hands flew across the keys, playing notes so fast they seemed impossible, but every single note was perfect. Not one mistake, not one hesitation. Dave's supervisor was sitting in the middle of the audience. His mouth fell open. He had heard humming for years. He knew she could play a little piano. But this was not a little. This was something he had never seen before. "Oh my God," he whispered to himself. "Who is she?" The variations continued. The music moved from playful to serious, from gentle to powerful. There were moments that sounded like rain falling on a quiet pond. There were moments that sounded like a storm tearing through the sky. There were moments of pure joy and moments of deep sadness. And through it all, played as if she had been playing every single day for the past 30 years. Her body moved with the music. Her eyes were closed. Her face was wet with tears that she did not even know she was crying. In the front row, Dr. Sarah, the chief of surgery, leaned forward in her seat. She had studied classical music as a child. She knew what she was hearing. This was not just good playing. This was genius. This was the kind of playing you might hear at Carnegie Hall, not at a hospital talent show. She turned to the person next to her. "Do you know who this woman is?" she asked. The other person shook their head. "I thought she was a janitor." "That is not a janitor," doctor said. "That is a concert pianist." The variations kept coming. Number 7, number 8, each one more beautiful than the last. The music filled every corner of the auditorium. It seemed to fill every corner of the world. People felt things they could not explain. Some of them started crying without knowing why. Some of them held their breath, afraid to make any sound that might break the spell. In the back of the room, a young resident named stood frozen. She was the same nurse who had heard humming in the hallway months ago. Now she understood. Now she knew what she had heard that day. Without thinking, she pulled out her phone and started recording. Did not notice. She did not notice anything. She was lost in the music. For the first time in over 30 years, she was not the janitor. She was not the invisible woman who cleaned floors. She was again. She was the girl who had played for emperors and presidents. She was the woman who had made millions of people cry with her music. The final variation began. Number 12, the most difficult one, the one that separated good pianists from great ones. Fingers moved so fast they became a blur. The notes poured out like a waterfall, impossible and beautiful. And then in the last moments the music slowed. It became soft again, gentle. The complicated variations melted away, and what was left was the simple melody. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. But now that simple song meant something completely different. It was not just a children's tune anymore. It was a story about dreams and loss, about hiding and healing, about a woman who had lost everything but found a way to keep going, about music that would not die no matter how hard someone tried to bury it. Played the last note. It hung in the air like a question, like a prayer, like a promise. Then there was silence. Complete, total silence. Kept her eyes closed. Her hands rested on the keys. She was afraid to look up. She was afraid of what she might see. Laughter, confusion, pity. The silence lasted for what felt like forever. 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And then the room exploded. The applause came like thunder. It was not polite clapping. It was not just appreciation. It was something much more. It was shock. It was wonder. It was the kind of reaction that happens when people witness something they will never forget. People jumped to their feet. They clapped and shouted and cried. The sound was so loud they could feel it in her chest. She finally opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. Everyone was standing. Every single person. Doctors and nurses and janitors and cooks and administrators. All of them on their feet, clapping as hard as they could. Did not know what to do. She sat there at the piano, overwhelmed, trying to understand what was happening. Tears were streaming down her face. Her hands were shaking again, but not from fear this time. From something else. Something she had not felt in a very long time. It was relief, it was freedom, it was joy. The music was not dead. It had never been dead. It was only sleeping, just like her mother said. And now, finally, it was awake. For 7 minutes had played, 7 minutes that changed everything. In those 7 minutes, the entire auditorium had transformed. When she first sat down at the piano, she was nobody. Just an old janitor in a blue uniform. Just a woman that people walked past every day without seeing. Just another act at a small hospital talent show. But by the time she finished, she was something else entirely. She was a mystery, a wonder, a miracle that nobody could explain. During those 7 minutes, the audience had gone through every emotion possible. They started with polite boredom, then came confusion, then disbelief, then amazement, and finally something that felt almost like worship. They had watched her hands move across the keys with impossible speed and perfect precision. They had heard music that seemed to come from another world. They had felt things in their hearts that they did not know music could make them feel. And now, as the last note faded away, they could not stay silent. They had to react. They had to do something with all the emotion that had built up inside them. So they stood, they clapped, they shouted, they cried. In the front row, Dr. Sarah was wiping tears from her eyes. She had been to concerts at the finest music halls in the world. She had heard the most famous pianists perform, but she had never experienced anything quite like this. There was something raw and real about playing. It was not just technical skill. It was soul. It was a lifetime of feeling poured into every single note. The standing ovation continued. Normally, applause lasts for maybe 30 seconds, a minute at most, but this went on and on. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, people would not stop. Still sat at the piano. She looked out at all these people standing for her, clapping for her, crying for her. People who had never noticed her before. People who had walked past her thousands of times without a second glance. She did not know what to do. She was not used to this. For so long she had worked hard to be invisible. She had wanted to disappear. And now, suddenly, everyone was looking at her. Everyone was seeing her. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying, but it was also beautiful. Slowly, carefully, stood up from the piano bench. Her legs were shaking. She had to hold onto the piano to keep her balance. Then she did something she had not done in over 40 years. She bowed. It was a small bow, A simple bend at the waist, but it was the bow of a performer, the bow of someone who had spent years on stages around the world, the bow of the concert pianist. The audience cheered even louder. Backstage, the other performers were standing at the edge of the curtain, watching with their mouths open. The nurses who had done the funny dance, the doctor with his guitar, the magic man, all of them staring at this small, gray-haired woman who had just done something impossible. "Did you know she could do that?" one of them whispered. "I had no idea. Nobody had any idea." "She is a janitor. She cleans bathrooms. How is this possible?" Nobody had an answer. Tom, the MC, walked back onto the stage, but even he seemed stunned. He stood there for a moment, forgetting his cards, forgetting what he was supposed to say. Finally, he spoke into the microphone. "Well," he said, his voice cracking, I think we can all agree that was unexpected." The audience laughed, but it was a warm laugh, a happy laugh, the kind of laugh people make when they share something wonderful together. "Everybody," Tom said, gesturing toward her. 32 years at this hospital and we never knew." The applause started again, smiled weakly and gave a small wave. Then she walked off the stage, back behind the curtain. The moment she was out of sight, she collapsed into a chair. Her whole body was shaking. She could not breathe properly. The emotions were too big, too strong. They had been locked away for so long, and now they were all coming out at once. Jessica, the young woman with the clipboard, rushed over to her. "Are you okay? Can I get you some water?" Nodded. She could not speak. Her throat was too tight. Jessica brought her a bottle of water and sat down next to her. "That was incredible," she said softly. "I have never heard anything like that in my life. Where did you learn to play like that?" Took a sip of water. Her hand was trembling so much that some of the water spilled. "It was a long time ago," she whispered. "A very long time ago." "But you must have trained for years. Were you a professional?" Was quiet for a moment, then she nodded slowly. "Yes, in China, before I came to America, I was a pianist." Jessica's eyes went wide. "A professional concert pianist, and you have been working as a janitor here for 32 years. "Yes." Why did you stop playing?" It was a simple question, but the answer was so complicated. How could explain everything? The politics, the persecution, the escape, the loss, the decades of silence. It would take hours to tell the whole story, maybe days. "It is difficult to explain," said. "Things happened. I had to leave my country. I had to leave my music. I thought it was gone forever." Jessica reached out and put her hand on his arm. "But it was not gone. It is still there. What you just did out there, that was not gone. That was amazing." Looked at the young woman. She saw kindness in her eyes, real, genuine kindness, the kind she had not seen directed at her in a very long time. "Thank you," said. "Thank you for saying that." Out in the auditorium, the talent show continued. Other acts performed, but nobody was really paying attention anymore. All anyone could talk about was, who was she? Where did she come from? How did she learn to play like that? The questions spread through the room like ripples in a pond. People pulled out their phones and started texting friends who had not come to the show. "Did you hear what happened? You will not believe it. The old janitor played piano like a professional. It was the most amazing thing I have ever seen." And in the back of the room, the young resident named was looking at her phone. She had recorded the entire performance, all 7 minutes of it. The video was a little shaky, and the sound quality was not perfect, but you could see and hear everything. You could see his hands moving across the keys. You could hear the music filling the room. You could feel the magic of that moment. Did not know what to do with the video. She thought about just keeping it for herself, but something told her that this was too important. This was too special. The world needed to see this. So with trembling fingers, she uploaded the video to the internet. She wrote a simple caption: "Hospital janitor surprises everyone at talent show. Just watch." She had no idea what she had just started. Within an hour, the video had 1,000 views. Within 2 hours, it had 10,000. And by the next morning, it would have millions. Life was about to change in ways she never could have imagined. The invisible woman was about to become visible to the entire world. But right now, in this moment, she did not know any of that. She just sat backstage in a metal chair, holding a bottle of water, trying to catch her breath, feeling something she had not felt in over 30 years. She felt alive. The talent show ended, but nobody went home right away. People stood around in the auditorium, talking in excited voices. Groups formed and broke apart and formed again. And in every conversation, there was only one topic. Did you see her hands? They moved so fast I could barely follow them. I had no idea she could do that. I have worked with her for 10 years. She cleans my office every morning, and I never knew. Where did she learn to play like that? Who is she? The questions kept coming, but nobody had answers. Was still backstage and nobody wanted to disturb her. They could see she was overwhelmed. They wanted to give her space. But Dave, her supervisor, could not wait any longer. He had known longer than almost anyone. He had talked to her more than most people, and he felt like he had just discovered that someone he thought he knew was actually a complete stranger. He walked backstage carefully, not wanting to scare her, was still sitting in her chair, staring at the floor. Her face was wet with dried tears. She looked exhausted but also somehow younger, as if years of weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Dave said softly. She looked up at him. For a moment she seemed afraid, like she expected him to be angry or disappointed or confused, like she thought she had done something wrong. But Dave just smiled. It was a warm, gentle smile. That was beautiful, he said. I have never seen anything like it. Let out a long breath. Thank you, Dave. I am sorry I never told you. Sorry? Why would you be sorry? Because I lied all these years. I told people I only played a little. That was not true. Dave pulled up a chair and sat down next to her. You do not have to apologize for anything, but I would like to understand if you want to tell me. Who are you? Where did you learn to play like that? Was quiet for a long moment. She had kept her secret for so long. It had become part of her identity. The woman who did not talk about the past. The woman who had no story. The woman who was just a janitor. But tonight, something had changed. The music had broken down the walls she had built. It had let the truth out. And now, sitting here with this kind man who had always treated her with respect, she felt like she could not keep hiding anymore. My name was not always, she began slowly. In China, I was a concert pianist. I trained at the Shanghai Conservatory of Music. I gave concerts all over the country. I was famous. Dave listened without interrupting. His eyes were wide, but he did not say anything. He just let her talk. In 1980, the government changed. People like me were not welcome anymore. They said my music was too Western. They took everything from me, my career, my piano, my recordings, everything, so I ran away. I came to America with nothing. And you never played again. Shook her head. I tried once, but it hurt too much. Every note reminded me of what I had lost, so I stopped. I got a job here. I became invisible. I thought that was safer. 32 years, Dave said softly. You have been hiding for 32 years. Yes, his voice broke. I was afraid of the pain, afraid of the memories, afraid that if I started playing again I would fall apart. But tonight you played. Yes. Why, what changed? Thought about this question. She thought about the talent show announcement, about Dave joking that she should sign up, about the sleepless night before the show, about her mother's letter, about all the small moments that had led to this one big moment. I do not know exactly, she said finally. I think I was tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. When I sat down at that piano tonight, I did not plan to play anything special. I was going to do the simple song and then disappear again. But when I touched the keys..." She paused, searching for the right words. It was like meeting an old friend, someone I had not seen in many years, and suddenly all the pain did not matter anymore. Only the music mattered, only the joy of playing. Dave reached out and put his hand on her shoulder. "I am glad you did it, or should I call you?" Smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Is fine, that is who I am now, but it is also still part of me. I understand that now." Word spread through the hospital. By the next morning, everyone knew. The cleaning lady on the third floor was actually a former concert pianist from China. She had been hiding in plain sight for over 30 years, and last night she had played like an angel. People started treating differently, not in a bad way. They smiled at her. They said good morning. They asked how she was doing. Some of them asked about her music, her past, her life. Questions that nobody had ever asked before. It was strange, for all these years she had wanted to be invisible. Now suddenly she was visible. People saw her, really saw her, not as a janitor, not as a background person, but as someone with a story, someone with a past, someone with extraordinary gifts. She was not sure how to handle it. Part of her wanted to run away, to find a new hospital where nobody knew her, to disappear again. But another part of her, a part that was growing stronger every day, did not want to run anymore. That part wanted to be seen, wanted to be known, wanted to finally stop hiding. Dr. Sarah came to find her that afternoon, the chief of surgery, one of the most important people in the hospital. She found mopping a hallway on the 4th floor. "Mrs. Doctor said, I have been looking for you." Stopped mopping and stood up straight. "Yes, doctor. I wanted to talk to you about last night. Your performance was remarkable, truly remarkable. I have studied classical music my whole life, and I know talent when I hear it. You have a gift." "Thank you, doctor, that is very kind." "It is not kindness, it is the truth." Doctor paused. "May I ask, do you still want to play? Do you want to perform again? Not just at hospital talent shows, but really perform?" Felt her heart speed up. It was a question she had not allowed herself to consider. Playing again, performing again, after all these years. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I have not thought about it." "Well, think about it," doctor said. "Because after last night, I think a lot of people are going to want to hear you play, and I think you deserve that chance. You have been hiding long enough, Mrs. It is time for the world to know who you really are." She smiled warmly and walked away, leaving alone in the hallway with her mop and her thoughts. That night went home to her small apartment. She sat on her old couch and looked around at the empty walls, the walls that had no pictures, no memories, no story. And she started to wonder if maybe it was time to change that. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to let the world see again. Maybe it was time to play. The video went everywhere. The young resident who had recorded its performance had posted it online with a simple caption. She expected maybe a few hundred people to watch it. Her friends, some, maybe a few strangers who happened to find it. She was wrong. In the first 24 hours, the video got 1 million views, then 2 million, then 5 million. By the end of the week, it had been watched 14 million times. News websites picked it up. Television shows talked about it. Famous musicians shared it. People all around the world were watching this 61-year-old woman in a janitor's uniform play the piano like a master. The comments poured in from every country. "I am crying. This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Who is this woman? We need to know her story. She has been cleaning floors for 30 years. This is a tragedy and a miracle at the same time. Her hands, watch her hands. That is not amateur playing, that is world class." Reporters started calling the hospital. They wanted to interview. They wanted to know everything about her. News vans appeared in the parking lot. Cameras followed her as she walked to work. Her phone number was somehow found and strangers called her apartment at all hours. Did not know how to handle any of this. She had spent her whole American life avoiding attention. Now, attention was everywhere. She could not escape it. At first, she wanted to hide. She stopped answering her phone. She asked to work different shifts so she could avoid the reporters. She considered quitting her job and moving to another city. But then something happened that changed everything. A letter arrived at the hospital, addressed to. It was from the Cleveland Orchestra, one of the finest orchestras in America. They had seen the video. They had learned about her history, and they wanted to invite her to perform as a guest soloist at their next concert. Read the letter 3 times, sure she was misunderstanding. This could not be real. The Cleveland Orchestra did not invite janitors to perform. They invited famous pianists, concert stars, people who had trained their whole lives. But the letter was real, and it was not the only one. In the following days, more invitations came. Music schools wanted her to give lectures. Concert halls wanted her to perform. Television shows wanted her to appear. A publisher wanted her to write a book about her life. Was overwhelmed. She did not know what to say to any of them. She was just a cleaning lady. She had not performed professionally in over 40 years. She was old, out of practice. Nobody would want to hear her play once they realized she was not as good as she used to be. But then she thought about that night at the talent show. She thought about how the music had felt flowing through her fingers. She thought about the joy on people's faces. She thought about her mother's words, "Do not be afraid." And she made a decision. She called the Cleveland Orchestra and said yes. The next 3 months were the busiest of life. She took a leave of absence from the hospital. She found a piano to practice on. Every day for hours and hours she played. Her fingers were stiff at first. Muscles she had not used in decades protested. But slowly, bit by bit, the skill came back. The music came back. The magic came back. She also started talking to reporters. She told her story. The story of the concert pianist from China. The story of losing everything and starting over. The story of 32 years of silence. People listened with tears in their eyes. They shared her story with their friends and family. She became a symbol of hope, a symbol of never giving up, a symbol of second chances. The night of the concert arrived. The concert hall was sold out. Over 2,000 people filled the seats. Many of them had seen the video and wanted to see perform in person. Many of them were from the hospital. Doctors, nurses, janitors, cooks, everyone wanted to be there. Dave was in the front row, beaming with pride. Backstage stood in front of a mirror, but she did not look like the from before. Tonight she wore a gown, deep red silk with golden flowers, the same style she had worn at her concerts in China all those years ago. Her gray hair was styled beautifully. She wore a touch of makeup. She looked elegant. She looked like a concert pianist. And for the first time in over 40 years, she felt like one too. A stagehand knocked on her door. 5 minutes, Mrs. Took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking just like they had at the talent show. But this time she was not afraid. She was ready. She walked through the backstage hallways. She could hear the audience murmuring on the other side of the curtain. She could feel the energy in the room, the anticipation, the excitement. The conductor met her at the edge of the stage. He was a tall, kind man who had worked with her during rehearsals. He took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes," said, and she meant it. She stepped out onto the stage. The spotlight hit her, and for a moment she could not see anything, just bright, white light. Then her eyes adjusted and she saw them. 2,000 people rising to their feet, applauding before she had even played a single note. They were applauding her, not for her music, not yet. They were applauding her story, her courage, her journey. They were welcoming her back to the stage she had been forced to leave so long ago. Walked to the grand piano in the center of the stage. It was beautiful, black and shining and perfect, nothing like the old upright at the hospital. This was an instrument made for concert halls, made for great music, made for her. She sat down on the padded bench. She adjusted her gown. She looked out at the audience one more time. In the crowd, she saw faces she recognized. Doctor, Robert, Jessica, so many people from the hospital who had come to support her. And mixed in with them, thousands of strangers who had watched a video online and felt moved enough to buy a ticket and come see her in person. The conductor raised his baton. The orchestra was ready. 2,000 people held their breath. Placed her fingers on the keys. And she began to play. The music that filled the concert hall that night was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It was not just technically perfect. It was full of life, full of story, full of everything had experienced in her 61 years on this earth. The joy of discovery, the pain of loss, the loneliness of exile, the fear of hiding, and now, finally, the freedom of being seen. She played for over an hour, piece after piece. The audience sat in silence, hypnotized, transported to another world by the sound of her piano. When the last note faded away, there was a moment of pure stillness. Then the audience exploded. They jumped to their feet. They cheered. They cried. They clapped until their hands hurt. Stood up from the piano and bowed. A real bow. The bow of a concert pianist. And as she stood there, bathed in light and sound and love, she thought about her mother. She thought about the letter in the wooden box. Your music is not gone. It is only sleeping. Mother thought you were right. It was only sleeping. And now it is awake. She smiled through her tears and bowed again. Her second chance had begun, and this time nothing would stop her.